Hello and welcome to the channel. This is part 2 in a two-part series on MRA, Mobile Remote Access for Cisco Expressway Servers. Today I'm going to do sort of like a lab walkthrough where we're going to set up MRA. Okay, and to do that we're going to go through the following steps. So the first thing you need to do is configure what's called an Axle user on the CCM. Second, you have to enable MRA, and this has to be done on the Expressway Core and the Expressway Edge. Third, you have to add the CCM on the Expressway Core, and then that will automatically create your neighbor zones. Okay, and I'll show you how that works when we get to that point. Next, you have to configure your domain settings on the Expressway Core, and then after that, you have to build your certificates on both the Core and Edge servers. And then the final step is to build your traversal zones. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's start at the top with configuring an Axle user. Okay, so for that, we'll go ahead and log into our CCM. Now, an Axle user is not an end user, it's an application user. So for that, we'll go to User Management, Application User, and we're going to select Add New, and we'll call this one MRA_AXL_user. And for the password, let's just say Cisco, all lowercase, and then Cisco again. And then the rest of this, you can just leave this as default, except down here at the bottom, Add to Access Control Group, click Find here. Now, Axle needs some very specific permissions, so especially if you've created just this unique user for just this one purpose, and that's all you're going to use it for, you can select this standard super user here. And then what we're going to do is come down here and add selected and click Save, and we're all set. Okay, so we're done with the first item. Next on the list is Enable MRA. And we're going to need to do this for both the Expressway Core and Expressway Edge. So let's start with the Expressway Edge. We're going to go up to Configuration, Unified Communication, Configuration, and we're going to click on Mobile and Remote Access here. We'll click Save. And really, there's no other configuration that we need to make when we turn this on the Edge side. Remember, the Edge is on the outside of the network, so it doesn't have any other option than to proxy to the core. That's sort of enabled automatically when you turn on MRA. Okay, so there's really nothing else to configure here. So let's go ahead and turn on MRA for the core. So for that, we're going to come back over to our Expressway Core, and just as before, we'll come up to Configuration, Unified Communications, and Configuration, and then we're going to select Mobile and Remote Access, of course. Now all of these settings here, for now, we can just leave them as default. I want to come down here first and to the bottom and click Save. And then here is where we can complete the next item on our list, add the CCM. So you can click this hyperlink here, Configure Unified CM Services, or you could go up to Configuration, Unified Communications, Unified CM Servers, and that would take you to the same place. Okay, and we're going to click New, and then here we want to put in our CCM's address for the publisher. Now you could, if you wanted to, you could set up a mutual TLS connection between the CCM and the Expressway Core. And if you chose to do that, it could be a little complex. It would involve downloading Tomcat certificates on the CCM, signing them, then re-uploading them, and uploading a trust certificate, and building a security profile that has a certificate embedded in it. And it's all very involved, and it's a bit of a headache. You could do that if you wanted to, but in most cases, at least for this part of it, this isn't really necessary. And most people don't do that, and the reason is because usually, in most cases, the CCM and the Expressway Core are inside the network, because there should already be a natural trust between them without having to go through all of that. So, if for whatever reason you do need to use mutual TLS, you have to put in the URL of the CCM here. Otherwise, you can just put in the IP address, and then you'll be all set. Okay, and then for the username, this is where we put in the Axle username that we created in the first step, and our password, remember, was just Cisco, all lowercase. Now, by default, TLS verify mode defaults to on, so we need to turn that off. And we'll click Add Address here, and then we'll have to wait for that to add. Okay, and then under Status here, we can see that our CCM pub and sub are showing as active. Even though I only added the publisher, it automatically added the subscriber as well because it's a cluster. Okay. Now, real quick, I want to show you this. If you go up to Configuration, Zones, okay, we have two neighbor zones here, one for the publisher and one for the subscriber. And these were created just now. They were created automatically when we added the CCM. Okay, so notice there's no checkbox here. We can't select them or do anything with them. And in fact, when I click on one of these, notice that all the fields are grayed out because all of this was generated automatically. Okay, and so if I go back here, notice here that there were also search rules that were created for us. But again, we can view them, but we can't edit them. Okay? Okay, so let's move on to the next step on the list. Configure your domain settings on the Expressway Core. Okay, so for that, we're going to go up to Configuration, Domains, and then we'll select our domain. In my case, that's dcloud.cisco.com. Okay, now you have to think about this. Across this domain, what are we trying to do related to MRA? What do you want to happen? Okay, so here, are you trying to allow SIP registration and provisioning on the Expressway? Because it used to be that you couldn't do MRA for the expressways, but now you can. So in other words, I could have someone outside my network go to register to the Expressway Edge, and the Edge proxies to the core, and the core processes the registration and registers locally. Now, you can do that now, but of course, that's not what we're trying to do here. We're registering to the CCM, so let's just go ahead and turn that one off, okay? Now, about this next one, you have to think about, so are we trying to allow SIP registrations on the CCM? In this case, yes, of course, that's exactly what we're trying to do. So we'll go ahead and leave that one on. And are you going to use IM and present services? Yes, probably in most cases, most people will. So we'll go ahead and leave that one on too. And then this next one here, you're going to do XMPP Federation. Now, this has to do with, well, a simplified explanation is that it's related to using IMMP across multiple domains so that they can share messages across the domain. So in this case, the answer is no. So we're going to go ahead and turn that off because we don't need that. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. Now recall that I said that you can use mutual TLS between the Expressway Core and the CCM if you want to, but you don't have to. And that's true. However, when you're setting up the traversal zones for MRA between the Expressway Core and Edge, you must use TLS. There's no choice in the matter. And mutual TLS requires certificates to be signed explicitly for that purpose, which we're going to cover in the next step. But when we're signing those certificates, we use something called a domain verification certificate, a DV certificate. And because it's domain verified, there are certain settings that have to be set up in DNS to make all of this work. Now, that's why DNS is so important in this process. Now, and again, I don't have access to DNS in my lab. Even so, even though we're not able to look at that right now, there are some things that we can check here on the expressways themselves. And so for that, we can go up to System, DNS, and we can see how this one's called exp-c-1.dcloud.cisco.com. That's the URL assigned to this server. And we're going to need to know that information for later, so just sort of make note of that. And the same thing's true on the Expressway Edge. So again, we'll go over here to our Edge server and go to System, DNS. And here we can see this one is basically the same, except it's a C instead of an E, Edge instead of Core. Okay, so exp-e-1.dcloud.cisco.com. And of course, we'll need to know that one as well. Okay, now from here, we can start setting up our certificates. So I'm going to go back over to our core, and then I'm going to go to Maintenance, Security Certificates, Server Certificate. And then here, I'm going to click on Generate CSR, which stands for Certificate Signing Request. Okay, and as I explained in the previous video, what this does is it creates a request for a certificate to be signed by a certificate authority. Now notice that the common name here, because remember I said that this was a domain verified certificate. Notice that the common name is auto-populated with the FQDN of this expressway. I can also put alternate names in here. For example, if I had other domains that I wanted to verify with a certificate. Now, we don't need to do that for this demo, but that might be something that you might need to do or it might need to consider in the future. Okay, so then we come down here to additional information, and this is just how we're going to sign a certificate. We can choose our bit length, so I'm going to choose 2048 here. That should be good, plenty secure. And then we'll leave this on SHA 256 here for digest. We could go higher, but 256 is fine. And then everything else down here is pretty much optional. I think I'll go ahead and change this to Japan, JP, just for fun. And we'll say Kobe since I'm in Kobe. And then I'll leave the rest as is. Okay, and then you just need to come down here to the bottom and click Generate CSR. Okay, now again, this generates our certificate signing request, but now we want to view that request. So we're going to come up here and click Show PEM File, and this is going to give us a pop-up window, and then what we want to do is go ahead and copy all of this text, top to bottom. So we want to include this begin certificate request and copy all the way to the end certificate request. We want the whole thing. Okay, we'll close that out, and then from here we want to go into our certificate server and then sign these certificates. Again, I mentioned in the previous video that the certificate server does not have to be a public certificate authority that that you pay to sign your certificates or anything like that. It can certainly be a private one like your Microsoft certificate server that you have on-prem, okay, which is what I've got here. Okay, so I'm all logged in, and the first thing we're going to do is request a certificate. So we'll click that here, and then we'll click Advanced Request here. And then right here where it says Base64 Encoded Certificate Request, I'm going to paste that CSR that we created and then copied just a little bit ago. Okay, and then for the template here, I'm going to choose Client Server, and then we'll go ahead and click Submit. Okay, so now we need to download it. And notice that we can download DER encoded or Base64 encoded. The main difference is that Base64 is in plain text, so it's easy to open and easy to read. Now, I like to use Base64, so that's what I'm going to select this radio button here, and then click Download Certificate. And then I'm just going to save that file to the desktop. Now I'm going to go ahead and change the file name here just to make it more clear to me what I'm dealing with, which file I'm dealing with. This is just for my own sanity so I don't get confused. So I'm going to go ahead and change cert new and rename it to exp-c. Okay. Okay, from here we're going to come up here and select Home, and then we want to select this option, Download a CA Certificate, Certificate Chain, or CRL. Okay, so again, if you remember from the previous video, the CA certificate is the certificate that says, I'm the certificate authority and I give validation to the certificate, which is what we just signed, okay? Now, we chose Base64 before, so I want to first select this radio button and then come down here and select Download CA Certificate. Okay, and again, just to keep things clear in my own head, I'm going to go ahead and change the name here. I'm going to change this to root_CA. Okay, from here we're going to go back to our Expressway Core. Okay, from here we first need to upload the certificate that we had signed, right, back into the Expressway. Okay, so I'm on the same page as before, and then I'm going to come down here and click Choose File, and then I'm going to upload the file named exp-c. Then I'll click Upload Certificate Server Data. Okay, here it says server certificate updated, but we need to restart it in order for it to take effect. But we can do this later. We don't need to do it now because remember, we also need to upload our CA certificate, which I renamed as root_CA. So for that, let's go to Maintenance, Security Certificates, Trusted CA Certificate, and what we want to do is select Choose File here, and then we'll select our root CA file. and then click Append CA Certificate. And our root certificate is uploaded. Good. Then from here, we can go ahead now and restart our server. So for that, we'll go to Maintenance, Restart Options. Then down here, we'll click Restart. Now, while that's restarting, we have to repeat all of these steps on the Expressway Edge. Okay, so first we'll go to our Expressway Edge server, then go to Maintenance, Security Certificates, Server Certificate. We'll click Generate CSR. Once again, we can choose 2048 and then SHA-256 here for digest. I guess I'll go ahead and do JP again, and we'll also go ahead and say Kobe here. And then I'll leave the rest as is, and then click Generate CSR. So again, we're going to come up here and click Show PEM File, and then we'll copy everything here just as before. Okay, then we'll close that out, and then go back to our certificate server. We'll click Home, and I'll select Request a Certificate, then click Advanced Request, and we'll paste in that CSR. Then we'll choose Client Server, and then Submit. Okay, we'll make sure we select Base64 encoded, then click Download Certificate. And once again, before we do anything else, before I forget, we'll go ahead and change the file name here, this time to exp-e, like that. Great. Next, we have to upload this certificate to our Edge server. So we'll go back to Expressway E. And then once again, I'll come down here and click Choose File. Then I'm going to select the file name, of course, exp-e. Then click Upload Server Certificate Data, and then wait for that to load as well. Now remember, since we're using the same certificate server, we can go ahead and use the same root CA file that we downloaded previously. We don't have to download it again. But of course, we'll still need to upload it to our Edge server. So for that, we'll go to Maintenance, Security Certificates, Trusted CA Certificate. We'll click Choose File again right here, and then we'll select our root CA file, and then click Append CA Certificate. Okay, then all we have to do is restart our server. Again, we can go to Maintenance, Restart Options, and then click Restart, and we'll wait for that to restart. Great. Now the last thing we need to do is build our traversal zones. Okay, so the server's restarted. Again, we're still on the Edge server here. So to build our traversal zones, the first thing we're going to do is go up to Configuration, Zones. We'll click New, and we'll call this MRA_traversal. And the type that I'm creating now, of course, now we want to select Unified Communications Traversal. Okay, so now we need to create our authentication credentials. Of course, remember from a previous video, you could have done this in advance, but we can just take care of that now by clicking Add Edit, Local Authentication Database here. Click New. And I'll say Cisco, all lowercase, and of course Cisco again, all lowercase, and then create credential. Okay, then we can close that out. And our username, of course, is Cisco. Now, notice now there's no H323 options as there was before in a previous video. But of course, we still have a listening port that we need to configure. And because TLS is required, I have to put in my TLS verify subject name. Which is just the URL of your Expressway core. So remember, that's exp-c-1.dcloud.cisco.com. Okay, and then we can leave the rest of this. But of course, we'll go ahead and change this to treat as authenticated, as I always like to do. And then I'll come down here and create zone. Okay, and then notice over here that it says on no active connections. And that's because we still have to do the core side. So let's go ahead and switch over to the core. Okay, we restarted our server from before, so I'll need to log in again here. Okay, now we can go to Configuration, Zones, and here I'll click New. Okay, and we'll call this MRA_traversal as well. Okay, and then again, we want to choose Unified Communications Traversal. Okay, so here we have to put in our username, that's Cisco, all lowercase. And then, of course, we'll have to add our password as well, which is also Cisco, all lowercase. And then our listening port was 7001, and we're going to leave the rest as default. And then we're going to come down here, and as usual, I'm going to choose treat as authenticated. And because we have to use mutual TLS, I can't simply put in the IP address of my Expressway Edge. I have to use the full URL. So remember, that was exp-e-1.dcloud.cisco.com. Okay, and then we'll create that zone. Okay, and we can see under SIP status here that it's active. So that means everything worked and we're all good. We've got MRA set up. And in fact, we can hop back over to our Edge server and just refresh our zones. And our traversal zone now shows as active as well. Okay, everything's all set and ready to go. Okay, that's the walkthrough for setting up and configuring MRA. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and got something from it. That's it for now. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.